Wolves get the 2-point win at home on a bizarre back-to-back against the Raptors, who are pretty subpar this year. Very strange game. Some stats about the Wolves in the second night of a back-to-back. They are the team that fouls the most per game in those nights, as well as they have the sixth most turnovers in those games. So when Naz Reid turns the ball over and picks up a foul in the first 30 seconds of the game, I get concerned because the Raptors are also the team that forced the most turnovers in the NBA. And this game was full of some extremely disappointing performances from players I really love, and then some really tremendous ones as well. So since we already started talking about Naz, let's talk about him first, because that was one of the worst Naz Reid games I've seen. He picks up his second foul a little over 3 minutes into the game, so he's got to go to the bench right away. He had a poor shooting night. He then picks up his third foul like 20 seconds into his next stint, so he's sitting the rest of the half. First half, he only had 4 minutes, and second half, I wouldn't be too happy with how he played either, but we'll get into that a little bit later. The other main person that I really loved, that I hated how they played tonight, was Anthony Edwards, and he really struggles historically against the Raptors. He has his lowest scoring average against any team against them, only 13.8 points per game, and it's kind of like he came out tonight trying to prove that wrong. He also struggled yesterday against the Denver Nuggets, only had 16 points in that one, so it seemed like he was trying to be very aggressive, trying to get his own, and he wasn't really making the right plays doing that. Plus, the Raptors are extremely tenacious on defense, so he's turning the ball over a lot, calling for fouls, really just doing his typical, hey, going to the rim, trying to get the Sucks to call something, which they just about never do, although he got a fair amount of free throws eventually tonight. And I've mentioned Ant yelling at the Sucks a lot this year, which you're maybe thinking, why do you have to bring that up all the time? Well, he's at 12 technical fouls already, and you get suspended after 16 in a season. We're only a little over halfway through, so he's probably hitting that unless he really holds himself back. Only players with more technicals than him this year, Dylan Brooks and Draymond Green by 1. To talk about the good performances and people that really carried us through most of that game and kept us in it, it was Kyle Anderson for 1, who has been kind of our most steady, really good performer the last couple months, as we've had some fluctuations with injuries, and he's just been super good lately. Then Jaden McDaniels, who has another great scoring night, defensively brought it completely as well, would have tremendous defense on Fred VanVleet, who I feel like drops 40 if Jaden is not out there, because he tore up everyone other than Jaden McDaniels, but couldn't do much of anything against him. And Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent were kind of my two main concerns coming in tonight. VanVleet has just been on a heater the last couple games, and I thought he was going to continue that, which he did. And Gary Trent's a Minnesota boy who just kind of always shows out when he's back in Minneapolis, and he did well, but didn't completely torch us at least. Also thought Nate Knight was really good in his minutes again. I feel like when someone starts to appreciate that guy, he's going to kind of flourish and become a fantastic role player for somebody. I hope it's us, but the Finch is always like, hey, I found something that works for one stint in the game, let me just ignore it the rest. It happens so frequently. Just never likes to kind of return to the well once he found something that's working well. Kind of like Jalen Noel tonight, who I thought played well, but just didn't get a ton of minutes. Finally, D'Lo, I thought was very Doka again, and he's been that for about 6 or 7 games. I feel like after his initial resurgence when Cat went out, where he started to score the ball super well, he's taken a bit more responsibility and initiative in the offense. He's just kind of been go-through-mowing the last several games. Been pretty frustrating to watch, although he would come up extremely clutch, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So in that first half, we have really bad performances from D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Edwards, and Naz Reid. 3 starters right there. But we were able to stay within 10 at the end of half, even though the Raptors shot so much better than they ever do. 63% from the floor, 64% from 3, and 73% simplexive field goal percentage for a team that's worse than the NBA. Also got to the line 8 more times than the Wolves in that first half. Best thing going for the Wolves in the first half is they forced 10 turnovers and only had 6. 5 of those being between D'Angelo Russell and Anthony Edwards, by the way. One more thing from editing, Kyle. Of our 15 turnovers tonight, 13 came from Naz Reid, D'Angelo Russell, and Anthony Edwards. Bye-bye. Third quarter was kind of more of the same, but we actually win the quarter by 2, which is big for the Wolves. It's been a very strong negative most of this year, but we're still down by 8 points going into the fourth quarter. I thought Naz Reid was still sloppy as hell throughout that time, turning the ball over a ton, had 4 turnovers in 22 minutes, barely even having the ball. But our ball movement improved a lot. Jaden McDaniels made a ton of huge defensive plays. As that ball was moving, eventually it found D'Angelo Russell a couple times in a row. He makes 3 straight spot-up threes, would have a ton of points in the fourth quarter, 4 threes, I believe, in the fourth. And so even though he didn't really get aggressive, the ball just kind of found him on the end of a lot of these possessions, and he took advantage, and it was so huge. And as much as D'Lo can be inconsistent, this dude always shows up in the clutch, and I will always believe that he's got ice in them things, in those veins. Would hit the game-winning free throws as well to bump the Wolves up by 2. And the end of the game was really concerning too. What tied up the game before D'Lo's free throws to take the lead was Naz Reid jumping on a pump fake at Scotty Barnes at the free throw line. Scotty Barnes ends up getting a dunk for that. And then on the Raptors' final possession of the game, when they're down by 2, Siakam dishes the ball to OG in the corner, who pump fakes and Naz Reid blows by yet again, giving him a wide open look to win the game. He misses, so the Wolves win. That was extremely losable though. Tough looks for some young players I really like, but D'Angelo Russell, even though I didn't like him most of the game, he's always a clutch player, and he came up huge for us to get us this win. We've got the Rockets for 2 straight games, so hopefully we really take care of business there, because as I mentioned, oh boy, we got a rough stretch coming up. We need to take these gimmies when they're given to us, because we won't have one for a long time.